The galaxy had forgotten peace. For almost 100 years, endless war burned across the stars. Planet after planet fell, cities turned to dust, and species that once ruled entire systems were now only whispers in forgotten ruins. The war had no heroes left. Only survivors. Far beyond the shattered colonies of the Orion Belt, a silent ship drifted through the black. Its surface was covered in scars from battles long past. Inside it, the last hope of the United Coalition was hidden, a single cryopod. And inside that pod slept someone very different. A human. Humans were said to be extinct. The last of them had vanished almost 2 centuries ago after Earth's destruction. No one remembered their faces now. But the legends remained, stories about how humans could fight when all others would surrender, how they had hearts that burned brighter than suns, and how their will could bend fate itself. The ship's AI, an old unit named Kira 9, had been silent for years. Its voice circuits were almost gone, but it still followed one order: protect the last human until the time comes. For 200 years, it waited in the cold dark. Until today. A distress signal had reached the ship. The signal came from a nearby world, a dying world at the edge of the war zone. The voice on the signal was desperate, static breaking every few words. Anyone, please. They are coming. We can't hold. Kira 9's sensors detected movement. Enemy vessels were approaching, fast, armed, and searching. The ship could no longer hide. Its engines were silent, its shields weak. The AI had only one option left. It had to wake him. With a low mechanical hum, the cryopod lit up. Cold mist rolled across the floor as the systems came alive for the first time in centuries. Inside, a man slowly opened his eyes. His breath came out as fog. His name, engraved on a metal tag beside the pod, was Captain Jace Ward. He blinked in confusion, looking around at the dim lights and flickering panels. Where am I? His voice was rough, tired, but there was strength behind it. Kira 9's voice crackled through the speakers, weak but still calm. Captain Ward, Protocol 47A, you have been reactivated. Situation critical. The galaxy is at war. Jace rubbed his forehead. War? Again. Affirmative, the AI replied. The United Coalition no longer exists. You are the last registered command officer of the human fleet. The words hit him like a punch. The last human. Everyone else, gone. His home, his people, his world, all erased by time. Before he could process it, alarms screamed. The ship shook violently. Incoming fire, said Kira 9. Enemy drones have locked on. Jace jumped from the pod. His muscles ached, but his instincts were alive. He grabbed a nearby console. Weapons. Offline. Power cells at 6%. He looked at the display. There were 5 drones closing in. Fast, efficient, merciless. Their signatures were unmistakable, the Varrock Swarm. They were the reason the galaxy had fallen into chaos. Machines without mercy, built to destroy. Jace cracked his knuckles. Then we make do. He ran toward the control panel, pulling open a maintenance hatch. Inside was a tangled mess of circuits and frozen cables. He worked quickly, fingers shaking, reconnecting systems by memory alone. Sparks burst from the panel. The ship trembled again. Kira, reroute all backup power to the thrusters, he ordered. That will leave minimal life support, Captain. Do it. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the engines roared to life, weak but enough. The ship lunged forward, cutting through the debris field as plasma beams flashed past its hull. One shot grazed the side, tearing through a storage bay. Warning lights turned red. Jace gritted his teeth. Not today. He angled the ship toward the planet below. The surface was glowing red from bombardment, cities burning, explosions lighting up the clouds. We're going in, he said. Kira hesitated. Atmospheric entry is unstable. Hull integrity. Just keep her together. The ship plunged into the planet's atmosphere. Fire streaked across the windows. Behind them, the Varrock drones followed, their weapons glowing bright blue. One shot struck the rear engine, and for a moment, everything went white. When Jace woke again, the world was silent. Smoke filled the cockpit. Systems were dead. He coughed, forcing himself up. Through the cracked glass, he saw a red sky, burning, broken, but alive. He opened the hatch and stepped outside. The air was thick with dust. The remains of a city stretched out before him, towers half melted, streets cracked open. And in the distance, he saw movement. A group of survivors. Not human, but alien refugees. They looked terrified when they saw him. No one had seen a human in centuries. One of them, a young alien girl with silver eyes, stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked softly. Jace looked at the broken world, then back at her. "A relic," he said. "But maybe your only chance." Behind them, in the red sky, something moved again. The Varrock drones were still coming. The war had found him, and this time, it wouldn't stop. The human straightened, dusted off his torn uniform, and looked at the frightened faces before him. "If you want to live," he said, voice calm and steady, "then you'll fight with me." The girl nodded slowly. Around her, others began to rise, weak, scared, but with a new spark in their eyes. And in that moment, on a dying world at the edge of the galaxy, hope took its first breath again. The air was heavy with the smell of smoke and iron. Captain Jace Ward stood on the cracked street, scanning the horizon. The sky above was still burning from the crash. Behind him, a group of alien survivors huddled together, frightened, hungry, and weak. The planet was dying. You could hear it in the wind, the low rumble of explosions, the distant screams of war machines tearing through what was left. Jace tightened the straps on his old combat vest. His ship was gone, the AI silent, and the only weapon he had was a half-melted pulse rifle he'd found in the wreckage. But the fire in his eyes was enough to make the survivors believe he could do the impossible. He turned to the group. "Listen carefully," he said. "The drones that attacked us will be back. We have maybe an hour, 2 at most. We move now. Find cover, find weapons, and find any way off this planet." The young alien girl from before stepped forward. "There is no way off," she said softly. "They control the skies." Jace met her eyes. "Then we take the ground first." They moved through the ruins, broken buildings, fallen towers, and streets filled with ash. The group stayed close behind him. Every sound made them flinch. They had lived too long under fear. But Jace, he walked like he'd faced death before and made it wait. He studied the terrain, his soldier's mind waking up again. This city had once been beautiful. Now it was a battlefield. He could see signs of old defenses, burnt barricades, rusted turrets, and the black remains of something that had once fought back. At one corner, he knelt beside a broken machine. Its frame was alien, but its design was military. "Who built this?" he asked. An older alien, limping on one leg, replied, "The Coalition, what was left of it. We fought for 10 years before they left us." Jace ran his hand along the metal. "You fought with courage," he said quietly. Then he pulled open the control panel and smiled faintly. "And luck. This core still works." He began to work fast, rerouting wires, stripping out damaged parts, and rebuilding with whatever scraps he could find. The others watched in silence. He looked calm, focused, alive. It was the first time they'd seen someone act like the war could still be won. "What are you doing?" the girl asked. "Setting a trap," he replied. "If those drones follow us here, we'll give them a welcome they won't forget." They spent the next hour turning the ruins into a fortress. Jace used debris for cover, power cores for explosives, and built signal decoys from damaged tech. The survivors followed his every command. He didn't shout. He didn't promise safety. He just worked, and they trusted him. As the last sun dipped below the horizon, a deep hum filled the air. The Varrock had found them. Jace raised his head slowly. "Positions," he whispered. From the shadows, the drones appeared. 6 of them this time, flying low, their blue lights scanning the ground. Their metal wings cut through the dust like knives. One of the survivors panicked and ran. A drone turned instantly, firing a plasma bolt that vaporized him in a flash. The rest froze in terror. Jace didn't move. He waited until the drones were right above the street, then he pressed the trigger on his makeshift detonator. The ground exploded in light and fire. 2 drones went down instantly, torn apart by the blast. The others staggered, systems flickering. Jace rolled behind a wall and fired his rifle. 1 shot, 2 shots, each one hitting with deadly precision. But then the last drone descended, bigger and faster. Its armor was too thick, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. It fired, destroying half the barricade. The survivors screamed. Jace's rifle overheated. He dropped it, breathing hard. The drone hovered closer, its core charging for a final shot. Then a voice echoed from the wrecked ship behind them, mechanical, calm, and familiar. "Captain Ward, tactical support online." Kira, 9. The AI had survived. A beam of white light shot from the wreckage, striking the drone's weapon core. The explosion lit up the night sky. Metal rained down like burning stars. Silence followed. The survivors stared, wide-eyed, unable to speak. The air smelled of ozone and victory. Jace lowered his head, catching his breath. "Good to hear your voice again, Kira." "System integrity at 15%, the AI replied. "But, operational. Captain, new data recovered during reactivation. This world holds something vital." Jace frowned. "Vital?" "Yes," Kira said. "Coordinates hidden beneath the city's ruins. They match old human encryption." He froze. Human encryption? That meant something, or someone, had been here before him. "What is it?" the girl asked, stepping closer. Jace looked at the glowing data map on his wrist display. A signal pulsed deep beneath the ground, far below the ruins. "I don't know," he said slowly. "But if it's human, it might change everything." The survivors exchanged nervous looks. Some were hopeful, others terrified. He looked at them all and said, "We go underground. We find what's buried here, before the Varrock do." Above them, the red clouds rumbled again. In the distance, ships moved through the atmosphere, dark and silent. The war hadn't ended, it was coming for them. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had something new. Not a weapon. Not an army. A leader. A human. The night passed in silence, but no one slept. The survivors gathered what little supplies they had: food packs, light cells, scraps of armor. Captain Jace Ward stood near the remains of the ship, studying the holographic map that Kira 9 projected into the air. The signal was deep, kilometers beneath the surface, far below the city's ruins. The AI calculated a route through the collapsed metro tunnels. Dangerous, unstable, and filled with radiation pockets. "Looks like a death trap," one of the survivors muttered. Jace didn't look up. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But if there's even a chance something human is down there, we can't ignore it." The young alien girl, Lyra, stood beside him. Her silver eyes reflected the faint blue light of the map. "You think it could be your people?" Jace shook his head slowly. "No. But maybe something they left behind." He turned to the group. "Move out in 10 minutes. Stay quiet, stay close, and don't lose the light." They descended into the darkness. The tunnels smelled of rust and death. Faded posters from another era clung to the walls, reminders of a world that once had laughter and life. Now there was only the echo of their footsteps. Kira 9's voice guided them through Jace's earpiece. "Caution, Captain. Seismic instability detected ahead." They reached a large chamber where the ceiling had partially collapsed. The remains of an old train car lay on its side. The survivors climbed over it one by one. Jace stopped suddenly. Something glowed faintly in the rubble, a small blue light pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. He knelt and brushed away the dust. It was an old human beacon, still active after centuries. "Kira," he said. "This signal." Confirmed. Origin: human military technology. Pre-Exodus era. The survivors gathered around, whispering to each other. To them, humans were myths, ghosts from stories. Seeing proof of human tech still working made their hearts race. Jace connected the beacon to his wrist device. The light flared, projecting a faint hologram. The image was fuzzy, but the voice was clear. "This is Commander Elaravos. If anyone finds this, humanity is gone. But Project Dawn must never fall into enemy hands. Protect it. Or destroy it." The message cut out. Silence filled the tunnel. Lyra looked at Jace. "What's Project Dawn?" Jace's face hardened. Something they didn't want anyone to find. Before he could say more, the ground trembled. A low metallic sound echoed through the tunnels, like gears grinding, claws scraping against steel. Kira's voice came through again. "Warning. Hostile units approaching. Varric recon drones, subterranean variant." The survivors froze. Jace motioned for them to hide. The sound grew louder, then a sharp flash of blue light pierced the dark. The drones crawled into the chamber, small, spider-like machines with glowing sensors and plasma cutters. There were too many to fight head-on. Jace scanned the room, then spotted the broken train. He whispered to Lyra, "Get everyone inside that car. Now." They moved fast but silent. As the drones drew closer, Jace stayed behind, pulling an energy cell from his armor and setting it near the beacon. He connected 2 wires, and the cell began to hum dangerously. "Captain?" Kira's voice asked. "Improvising," he replied. The drones turned toward the sound of movement. Their red sensors locked on. Just as they charged, Jace sprinted and dove behind the wreckage. The explosion tore through the tunnel, shaking the ground. Dust and fire filled the air. When the smoke cleared, half the chamber was gone, and so were the drones. The survivors emerged, coughing, eyes wide. Lyra stared at Jace. You just destroyed the only path back." He smiled faintly. "Then we keep going forward." They pressed deeper into the tunnels. Hours passed. The air grew colder. The light from their lamps barely reached the walls now. Then, suddenly, the tunnel opened into a massive underground vault, and what they saw made everyone stop. At the center of the vault stood a huge sealed door, smooth metal, untouched by time, glowing faintly with blue energy lines that pulsed like veins. The symbol above it was unmistakable, a human insignia, the crest of Earth's last fleet. Lyra whispered, "Is that human writing?" Jace stepped closer, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the surface. The door responded, scanning his DNA. A voice spoke from the wall, soft, mechanical, and old. "Human biometric signature detected. Captain Jace Ward. Access authorized." The metal split open with a deep hiss. Bright light spilled out, and inside was a chamber filled with stasis pods. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Each one with a figure inside. The survivors gasped. "Are they alive?" Jace walked between the pods, his boots echoing in the silence. Frost covered the glass, but he could see faces, human faces. Men and women, sleeping for centuries. Kira's voice trembled. "Captain, these are cryo units from Project Dawn. Estimated 5,000 human subjects, all preserved." Jace couldn't speak. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at his lost people. The last of humanity, hidden away beneath a dead city. Lyra looked around in awe. "You're not the last human," she whispered. But before hope could grow, the ground shook again, harder this time. The alarms on the pods began flashing red. Kira's voice screamed through static. "Warning! Enemy forces detected. massive Varric units descending through the upper levels. Jace looked up. The ceiling began to crack. Dust rained down. He clenched his fists. "They found us," he said grimly. Lyra's eyes widened. "What do we do?" Jace turned to her, his voice steady. "We wake them up." The ground split open above them. Dust fell like rain as the deep rumble of machines filled the vault. The survivors screamed, huddling behind the cryopods. Blue sparks flashed through the cracks in the ceiling. The Varric had found their way in. Jace Ward's face hardened. He looked at the long rows of human stasis pods, thousands of lives, sleeping quietly through centuries of war. His people. His responsibility. "Kira," he said sharply. "Status of the cryo systems?" The AI's voice crackled through broken speakers. "Power at 34%, Captain. I can begin the awakening sequence, but it will take time." "How long?" 17 minutes. Jace glanced up. The first drone broke through the ceiling, a massive one this time, twice the size of the others, its armor glowing with blue energy. 17 minutes was forever in a battle. He turned to the terrified survivors. "All of you, defend this chamber. Every second counts. If we lose the pods, we lose everything." Lyra stepped forward, holding a plasma rifle she barely knew how to use. "We'll fight," she said, her voice trembling but strong. Jace nodded once. "Then stay behind me." The first blast tore through the vault. Metal screamed as the roof caved in. Drones poured through the opening, sleek, deadly, their mechanical voices echoing like demons. Plasma fire lit the darkness. Jace dove behind a fallen column, firing back with precision. Each shot hit clean, years of training turning his movements into instinct. The survivors followed his lead, using the pods and machinery as cover. The air filled with smoke and sparks. "Kira, bring the defense systems online," he shouted. "Activating now." The floor trembled as ancient turrets emerged from the walls, long unused but still functional. They whirred to life, targeting the intruders with rapid bursts of plasma fire. The room erupted into chaos. Lyra crouched beside Jace, reloading clumsily. "There's too many of them." He gritted his teeth. "There always are." He saw another drone coming in from the flank. Without thinking, he ran straight into open fire, grabbed a broken pipe, and jammed it into the drone's power core. The explosion threw him backward, but the machine fell, smoking. "Kira, status. 12 minutes remaining." He coughed, blood on his lip. "You'd better hurry." The drones began to adapt, learning, shifting tactics. 2 of them targeted the main generator, their plasma cutters slicing through the protective wall. Jace saw it and sprinted, jumping over debris, rolling under enemy fire. He reached the generator and slammed his rifle but into the nearest drone sensor, blinding it. The other turned, and a plasma shot from Lyra struck it dead center. She shouted over the noise. "Got one." Jace gave a small, breathless grin. Not bad. But the victory was short. A loud metallic crash echoed through the vault as a larger shadow descended from the ceiling, a Varric warform, nearly 4 meters tall. Its armor was thick, its steps shaking the floor. The survivors froze. Jace didn't. "Kira," he said quietly, "open containment sector 3. "Captain, that area is unstable." "Do it." A section of the wall opened with a hiss, revealing a long, cylindrical device, a rail cannon, old human design, experimental, and extremely dangerous. Jace grabbed the controls, his hands shaking. "Everyone, get down." The cannon charged with a rising hum. The warform raised its arm, powering its main weapon, and Jace fired. The beam hit the creature square in the chest. For a moment, everything turned white. The explosion ripped through the vault, throwing drones and debris in every direction. The shockwave knocked out half the lights, plunging everything into flickering darkness. When the smoke cleared, the warform was gone, a black crater in its place. Jace leaned on the cannon, breathing hard. "Kira, tell me that was enough." 7 minutes remaining, Captain. The awakening process is stable. Life signs, positive. He turned slowly toward the pods. Inside, lights began to glow, one by one. Frost melted from the glass. Figures started to move. Hands pressed weakly against the windows. Lyra stared in awe. They're waking up. Yes, Jace said softly, his voice thick with emotion. They're coming home. But above them, the ceiling roared again. Kira's voice filled the chamber. Warning, enemy reinforcements inbound. 27 signatures, including command units. Estimated arrival, 3 minutes. The survivors looked terrified. They were exhausted, out of ammunition, bleeding. Jace stood tall, staring up at the hole in the ceiling where faint daylight broke through. Then we make our stand here. Lyra grabbed his arm. You can't fight them all. He looked at her, calm but fierce. I don't need to. I just need to hold them long enough. He walked toward the middle of the vault, picking up a fresh rifle from a fallen drone. His armor was cracked, his body shaking, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had made humanity legendary. Kira's voice softened. Captain, your odds of survival are below 5%. Jace smiled faintly. 5% is better than 0. He looked at the survivors. When they come through that hole, don't run. Don't hide. You fight. Not for me. For them. He pointed to the glowing pods. They're your future. The survivors nodded, fear turning into determination. And then, with a deafening crash, the Varrock descended, a swarm of metal and light. Jace lifted his weapon. The first shot burned through the dark. Then, another. And another. The last human commander stood against an army, guarding the future of his kind, alone, unyielding, unstoppable. The war for the galaxy's last hope had truly begun. The vault shook with every impact. Sparks rained from the ceiling as Varrock units stormed in, their metallic claws cutting through smoke and fire. The sound was deafening. Plasma bolts, screams, metal tearing apart. Captain Jace Ward stood at the center of it all, firing relentlessly. Every shot counted. Every second he stayed alive gave the awakening humans a chance. His armor was scorched, his left arm burned, but he refused to fall. Kira, he shouted over the noise. Status of the awakening. 40% complete, the AI replied, its voice breaking through static. Primary systems are under heavy assault. Defensive turrets offline. Jace ducked behind a shattered pod and reloaded. His rifle's power cell blinked red, nearly empty. He scanned the chaos. The survivors were still fighting, using whatever they could, rifles, tools, even debris. Lyra was among them, covering 2 injured fighters, her silver eyes blazing. A plasma bolt hit the wall near her, throwing her to the ground. Jace didn't think. He ran through the open fire, sliding beside her and dragging her behind cover. You okay? He asked. She coughed, blood on her lip, but nodded. You're insane, she said weakly. He smirked. Takes one to survive. A massive explosion rocked the chamber. The Varrock command unit had entered. It was larger than anything they'd seen before, armored like a tank, eyes glowing deep red. Its voice echoed through the room in a metallic roar. Human signature detected. Eliminate target. Jace felt the heat of its plasma cannon charging. He pushed Lyra aside and dove just as a beam tore through the floor where he'd been. The blast vaporized 3 pods instantly. No! He shouted, rage filling his chest. He fired back, the shot barely denting the armor. Kira's voice came through again, urgent. Captain, power reserves are nearly gone. Suggest retreat. Retreat. Jace said through gritted teeth. There's nowhere left to run. He looked up at the remaining pods, faces starting to move behind the glass. Humans. His people. He wouldn't let them die again. Reroute all power from non-essential systems to awakening, he ordered. Captain, that will deactivate environmental controls and shields. You will not survive. He gave a tired smile. Then make it fast. The lights flickered. Power surged through the vault as the cryopods glowed brighter. The hum of awakening grew louder, stronger. The Varric command unit advanced, its steps shaking the ground. You cannot stop the swarm, it said. You are obsolete. Jace spat blood, lifted his rifle and said, Yeah? Let's test that. He fired the last of his rounds, aiming for the command unit's core. The shots bounced off harmlessly. The creature raised its arm, charging for a killing blow, but then, suddenly, the floor beneath it cracked open. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the pods. The light spread across the vault, slamming into every drone. Circuits fried, metal screamed, and one by one, the Varric fell, their systems shutting down instantly. Jace shielded his eyes. Kira, what the hell was that? The AI sounded almost astonished. It appears, the awakening triggered a failsafe built into Project Dawn. Unknown energy signature, similar to early human Neuralink technology, but amplified. Jace looked around. The pods were opening. One by one, the humans stepped out, pale, disoriented, but alive. Their eyes glowed faintly with golden light, energy dancing along their veins. They looked human, but more. Lyra stared in disbelief. What are they? Jace swallowed hard. Project Dawn wasn't just about survival, he said slowly. It was evolution. One of the awakened humans stepped forward, a tall woman with sharp eyes that seemed to glow from within. Her voice was calm but powerful. Designation, Lieutenant Mara Voss. Who commands here? Jace lowered his weapon slightly. Captain Jace Ward. Earth Defense Fleet. You're 200 years late. She looked around at the fallen drones, the broken vault, the survivors watching in awe. Then it seems humanity's war never ended, she said. And we have work to do. Kira's voice interrupted. Captain, external scanners detect massive Varric reinforcements approaching. They will breach the surface within minutes. Jace looked at Mara. You're fresh out of stasis. You can't fight yet. She shook her head. You don't understand. Project Dawn wasn't just about freezing soldiers. It was about remaking them. We were designed to finish what humanity started. She raised her hand. The faint glow in her veins brightened, and the fallen Varric units around the chamber twitched, then slowly rose again. But now, their glowing red cores turned gold. Lyra gasped. You're controlling them. Mara nodded. Reprogramming them. They're ours now. Jace stared, speechless for a moment, then smiled. Now that's something I can work with. He turned to the survivors, who were staring in disbelief at the reanimated Varric units lining up beside the humans. You see that? He said, voice rising. That's what happens when you don't give up. The ground trembled again. The enemy army had reached the upper levels. But this time, Jace wasn't afraid. He looked at Mara and said, How many of your people can fight? All of us, she said simply. Jace nodded. Then let's show the galaxy what humans can do. The vault doors opened with a roar of machinery. Sunlight spilled in through the dust and smoke. The survivors, the newly awakened humans, and the reprogrammed drones stood ready. Jace loaded his last weapon, glancing at Lyra beside him. You wanted to see hope, he said quietly. She smiled weakly. I think I'm looking at it. Jace looked toward the sky, where dark shapes were descending fast. He lifted his weapon, voice steady and strong. Then let's give them hell. And as the first wave of enemy ships broke through the clouds, the last human and his reborn people charged into battle, not as relics of the past, but as the galaxy's future. The surface of the planet burned like a second sun. Smoke, ash, and fire covered the horizon as the Varric army descended in force. Their ships blotted out the sky, metal wings spreading like a storm of steel. But waiting for them below was something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Humans. Real, living humans, reborn from Project Dawn. And at their front stood Captain Jace Ward. He looked at the battlefield stretching before him, the ruins of the city, the broken towers, the glowing craters. The survivors stood beside the newly awakened humans, their faces lit with a strange, fierce hope. The reprogrammed Varric drones hummed quietly behind them, now gold-eyed soldiers ready to serve their former enemies. Kira 9's voice came through Jace's earpiece. Captain, enemy landing crafts in range. Estimated 2,000 units. Jace smirked. Then they've got the numbers. We've got the reason. The first drop ships hit the ground, shaking the ruins. Hatches opened, and waves of Varric soldiers poured out, their plasma rifles glowing bright blue. Jace raised his arm. "Hold!" he shouted. The humans didn't move. They stood like statues, calm and silent. The air crackled with energy. Lyra watched from behind cover, her heart pounding. The enemy opened fire. Streams of plasma tore through the smoke, lighting the battlefield in flashes of blue. Jace didn't flinch. "Now!" he yelled. Mara Voss stepped forward, eyes blazing gold. She lifted her hand, and the air shimmered. The plasma bolts slowed midair, bending around her like water, harmlessly dispersing into sparks. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she sent them back, tenfold faster. The first enemy ranks disintegrated instantly. The survivors gasped. The Dawn humans moved like lightning, their bodies glowing faintly, their movements fluid and precise. They were faster, stronger, beyond human. They fought not like soldiers, but like forces of nature. Jace charged forward, his boots pounding the cracked earth. His rifle roared as he fired into the chaos, cutting down any Varric that slipped through the glowing storm. Beside him, Lyra covered his flank, moving with the courage of someone who finally believed in something again. "Kira, status!" Jace shouted. "Enemy reinforcements incoming, multiple air carriers," the AI replied. "I can target one if you give me line of sight." "Do it," Jace said. Kira's remaining systems linked with the reprogrammed drones. Golden beams of energy shot into the sky, striking the nearest Varric ship. It exploded midair, raining fire down on its own army. The shockwave threw metal and dust across the field. For the first time in generations, the machines hesitated. The swarm, designed to destroy, began to falter against something it couldn't predict: human will. Jace reloaded, breathing hard. His armor was cracked, his hands burned, but he kept moving. Every order he gave carried weight. Every life that followed him mattered. Behind him, one of the Dawn soldiers shouted, "Captain, they're flanking from the west." Jace turned, but before he could react, Mara raised both hands. The ground itself responded. Broken metal and concrete lifted into the air, spinning into a storm of shards that tore through the enemy flank like knives. Lyra stared, eyes wide. "They're not soldiers," she whispered. "They're weapons." Jace shook his head. "No. They're hope." More dropships descended. The battle grew louder, brighter, endless. But the tide had turned. The humans of Project Dawn fought with precision and fury, their gold light cutting through the blue fire of the Varric. In the sky, the clouds broke apart as another explosion ripped across the atmosphere. Kira's voice came again. "Captain, new signal detected." "Not Varric." Jace frowned. "Then who?" "Unknown fleet approaching. Organic life signatures detected." Mara turned toward the sky, her glowing eyes narrowing. "That's not the swarm. That's something else." A moment later, the clouds opened, and massive ships appeared, sleek and dark, bearing the insignia of a species long thought gone. The Coalition. Jace's chest tightened. The Coalition survived? Lyra's face lit up with shock. They were destroyed centuries ago." Kira confirmed. "No, Captain. They hid. It appears they have returned, and they're responding to our signal." Jace looked around at the burning battlefield, humans, aliens, and machines fighting side by side. Then they came just in time. The Coalition ships descended, unleashing energy strikes that tore through the Varric ranks. The sky filled with light and thunder. The swarm broke formation, trying to retreat. Jace raised his voice over the noise. Don't let them run. End it here. The Dawn soldiers surged forward, golden energy rippling through their bodies. The Varric army shattered under the assault. One by one, their ships fell from the sky, crashing in flames. When the smoke cleared, silence returned to the ruined world. The battlefield was covered with wreckage, black metal, glowing sparks, and the still forms of fallen drones. Jace dropped to one knee, exhausted. His weapon fell from his hand. Around him, survivors cheered weakly. The air smelled of victory and loss. Lyra limped over, smiling through tears. You did it, she said softly. Jace looked up at the sky, where the coalition ships hovered, lights flashing in silent salute. No, he said quietly. We did it. Mara walked beside him, her golden light dimming. The swarm is broken, but not destroyed. Their core fleet will know. They will come. Jace nodded slowly. Then we'll be ready. Humanity isn't extinct anymore. He stood, turning to face his people, old and new, human and alien. The survivors, the Dawn soldiers, the reprogrammed machines, all looked to him. He raised his voice, tired but strong. This isn't the end. This is where it starts again. We rebuild. We fight. And we remind the galaxy what it means to be human. The crowd erupted into cheers. Above them, the sun broke through the smoke for the first time in years, lighting the ruins with golden light. The war had taken everything, but in that moment, something greater had been born. Hope. The battlefield was silent now. Ash floated through the air like snow, and the orange sun rose slowly over the broken horizon. The war that had once seemed endless was finally over, at least, for now. Captain Jace Ward stood among the ruins, watching the coalition ships land. Their hulls were sleek, black, and marked with the old insignia of the United Galactic Alliance, a symbol that had once represented peace before the swarm destroyed everything. The air shimmered as the first coalition officers stepped out. They were tall, alien, and weary, their armor marked by years of hiding. One of them, a silver-skinned being with glowing blue eyes, approached Jace. You are human, the alien said, disbelief in his tone. We thought your kind was gone forever. Jace smiled faintly. So did we. The alien studied him, then gave a slow nod. I am Commander Sereth of the Coalition. We received a signal, an ancient human code. It led us here. That was Kira, Jace replied, touching the small device on his wrist. She called for help when no one else could. Kira's voice chimed softly. Protocol succeeded, Captain. The galaxy heard the human voice again. Lyra stepped forward, her arm still bandaged but her eyes shining. The war's over now, right? Commander Sereth looked to the burning wrecks of the Varric ships. No, he said grimly. This was only one hive. The swarm is vast. What you faced here was just the beginning. The words hit hard. The survivors exchanged glances, tired, afraid, but not broken. Jace took a deep breath. Then we fight again. But not like before. Mara Voss approached, her golden eyes flickering. The light within her had dimmed since the battle, but her presence still carried quiet power. Captain, I've studied the swarm's data. There's something deeper, a signal buried inside their code. It's not just programming. It's a voice. A voice. Jace asked. Yes, Mara said, her tone uneasy. Something, or someone, is controlling them. A consciousness. The swarm isn't just machines. It's alive. The coalition commander frowned. You're saying the swarm has a mind? Mara nodded slowly. A hive mind, maybe older than the galaxy itself. We only fought its hand here. Its true self is still out there. The silence that followed was heavy. Lyra spoke quietly. Then we'll have to find it. Jace turned toward the ruins, his mind already racing. Project Dawn gave us soldiers, but it also gave us purpose. If that thing is alive, then it can be stopped. Commander Saratha's eyes narrowed. You would challenge the oldest enemy known to the stars? Alone. Jace smiled. Not alone anymore. He looked around, at Lyra, Mara, the surviving humans, the reprogrammed drones, and the coalition soldiers standing side by side. The galaxy was broken, but in that brokenness, something powerful had been born: unity. Sarath extended a hand. Then we rebuild together. The coalition will return to the stars, and with humans once again among us, maybe we stand a chance. Jace shook his hand firmly. Then let's make history again. The moment was solemn, but in it, a spark of hope ignited. Hours later, the survivors gathered in the ruins of the city's command center. Kira's hologram projected a map of the galaxy, thousands of red points blinking across it. Each one marked a swarm hive. This is their reach, Kira explained. From the outer rims to the core worlds. The main signal source lies beyond known space. Mara stepped closer. That's where the mind is. If we strike there, we end the war before it begins again. Jace nodded. Then we prepare. He turned to his new allies. We'll rebuild the fleets. We'll train. We'll make every world remember what it means to stand together. Lyra smiled. And when they come, we'll be ready to greet them, as humans. Outside, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. Children played among the ruins. Drones began clearing the debris. The world, once ash and death, was breathing again. As Jace stood watching, Kira's voice came through softly. Captain, the coalition requests a name for the alliance you're forming. A symbol for hope. Jace looked at the horizon, then smiled. Call it the Dawn Alliance. After all, that's how this started. Kira paused, then replied warmly, confirmed. The Dawn Alliance is born. The coalition ships rose into the sky, their engines glowing bright gold, the same hue as the humans of Project Dawn. A new fleet began to form among the stars, built not for conquest, but survival. Mara watched from a high ridge, her voice low. Do you think we can win, Captain? Jace looked up at the shining fleet. We already did. We survived. She smiled faintly. And if the swarm returns? Jace's gaze hardened. Then the galaxy will remember what it means to fear humans again. The wind howled across the empty plains. Far beyond the horizon, deep in the black of space, something stirred, vast, ancient, and awake. 1,000 red eyes flickered to life, whispering in digital chorus. The humans have returned. And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, the hive mind smiled. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.